Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to Nerf Check. Yeah, and I've already done it. See, told you.
Yeah.
It is me again, riding solo by myself. However, we finally got some people on the podcast that one know how to podcast, and two know what the hell they're talking about. Today, we have Mr. Joe Bagazy and, of course, Mr. Greg Persons. Some great people who both know a lot more about dwarves than I do, other than getting absolutely thrashed by them. Hello, guys, and how are you tonight?
Doing great.
Yeah, doing well. It's
Well,
wonderful to be here. Thanks for having us on.
well, this is a great pleasure for me. I'm big fans of both of you. I've had I've never played either one of you. I was thinking I've played Greg before, but I have not.
No.
Luckily, I've never played the pair of you playing dwarves, which both of you are bloody lethal with. So hopefully, you'll be able to bestow some knowledge onto our tens of listeners while we do our dwarf army review. Yay! So, without further ado, just to remind everybody, if you've never seen one of our army reviews, we do it differently than most people. If you're looking for a dead insight of all the stats, all the numbers, everything else, we don't do that. We basically want to give you the nuts and bolts of the thing, plus a bunch of good ideas, and get you moving. So, without further ado, let's start with things about the dwarf army that we need to talk about, which is obviously it's Army Special Rule, which I believe is the Mastiffs. Is that correct? Like that's their
The unit upgrade.
the unit upgrade, which is just the Mastiffs themselves. So I'm guessing this is a good thing, a bad thing. What do you think there, Joe?
Oh, I think they're fantastic. Dwarves are, as an army, they're not going to have a lot of firepower to kill something on one go. So you kind of need something to soften up the army before the lines clash. And the Mastiffs, each unit gets 8 chances. They hit on 4s regardless of situation. So it's a nice 2 or 3 wounds, hopefully, on a defense 4 or 5 unit. Um, I think overall, dwarves probably don't have anything that does more than 6 points of damage in a single round of combat. So getting a couple before the lines clash is always a good thing.
Yeah, and it's also I play a list that's heavier on shooting maybe than most, and when you get that like sweet spot somewhere between turn 3 or 4 where your mastiffs are in range and the rest of your shooting, you can do a lot more damage than people often expect.
Exactly.
And if you have, regiments of dwarfs, especially, it's easier to like unload your mastiffs on the same target. And ignoring like any penalties, like stealthy doesn't matter, individual doesn't matter. You just always hit on 4s is really nasty.
Yeah. Well, that's I would say let's talk about that because I hate the fact that they always get the hit on 4s. I'm like,
Yep.
some of the give me some sort of defense against these. And I mean, why are your dwarf players so cruel to dogs? I mean, all of them are just grabbing onto these things and hucking them out into the middle of nowhere. It should be PETA should be coming after them at some point.
Well, I will make the point that as an animal enthusiast myself, I do not use dog models. I have the old long drawn Slayer pirates. If you're a longtime Warhammer fantasy player, you know them. But they have a bunch of pistols and they like to drink. So I always tell my opponent, they run out into the battlefield, they fire their pistols, and then they pass out drunk. They wake up when the battle's over and reload, and they're ready to go again.
Beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. I love that. All right. Well, the other thing we got to talk about, of course, is their command dice. Now, sorry, I don't have the command in front of me because they should be banned. Regen and strength on a unit. Like, come on, this is a bit on the high side. Again, in my opinion, I do. I play a lot against dwarves, and I dwarves are just damn good. And giving them regen. No, sorry, am I wrong? Is it regen?
They don't get regen.
No, it's not. It's free.
No, I wish they got regen.
You get vengeance.
That sounds great.
It's vengeance.
Yes.
So okay? Well, why don't you give me a heads up on what this actually is? So it's vengeance.
So
Right?
yeah, so there's a couple of units that already have vengeance, right? So it's whenever you are counterattacking, you get a +1, right? Is it a
To your
crush
crushing
or a
strength.
+1?
Yeah.
So if you have Brock Riders or something along those lines, you automatically get that. But now you can give it to an infantry unit. You get into the flank of a unit and you get vengeance. All of a sudden, it's like a nice free Bane chant. It makes them more formidable in combat for sure, but it's pretty expensive. How many points is that?
It's
Greg?
4.
It's
4
4.
command points. Yep.
Yeah. And now that they made the change to the command dice where you're not getting a red, white, and blue anymore, you're just getting 3 reds. That's
I
going
also
to be
think they changed it from its original iteration was like any dwarf unit, so it had to have the dwarf keyword, so like you couldn't give it to your earth elementals, for example.
right.
But
Yes.
now it further like it can't apply to hordes. Because like
That's right.
countercharging
They took
with
that
a
away.
horde of shield breakers and all of a sudden being crushing strength 3 before you
Right.
cast Bane Chant.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's a little extreme. And then the other one they get is they can give Spell Ward to a unit that
That's it.
costs 3 command points, and it has the caveat where you can actually do it twice, whereas normally a command, can only be done once per phase. I mean, you have to have 6 command dice available
Nice to
to
do that. Yeah.
do that, but
All right.
So, what
Well,
do you think with those commands that the dwarfs have, Greg? Do you see yourself investing more points into the command dice?
well, I played the other weekend at Dead of Winter, and it was my first time playing in a long while. So it was my first time using command dice. And I had purchased an extra white die simply because I swapped out a magic item and took that instead and figured I want to be able to play with these and see what they do.
Right.
They were fine. I didn't think they were very game breaking. I used the Spell Ward one a couple times against opponents who had like significant lightning.
Right.
And I mostly was putting it either on like a war engine that's a little more susceptible to lightning bolt, or my horde of shield breakers because they're the lowest defense at 4. And every turn, then when it was my opponent's range phase, I'd say, "Hey, if I hadn't cast Spell Ward on this unit, would you have shot at them?" And every single time they were like, "Nope." I'm like, "All right, like that's fine." And then I used the vengeance a couple times and it was good. It didn't come up every game, but when it did come up, it was great. So
well, I seem to think it gives the one thing back to the dwarf army that it's missing, which is the a crushing strength. I mean, there's
yeah,
not a lot of units in the dwarf army that actually come preset with the crushing strength. So being able to hit back, most of
Mm-hmm.
the time, what are you hitting on 4s? Wounding on a regular unit is a 4. Being able to stick around, sure, but what is that, like 3-4 damage per round sort of thing?
yeah.
You could be there for a while. Having the crushing strength, I thought really did change the way that the army played. But well, for now, we're going to have to deal with these things until they figure out what the hell they're going to do with the
What is the consensus in the Northeast with command dice? Because I know the Mid-Atlantic, it's a big no.
Yeah, we Rossi asked people after Dead of Winter, and it was pretty consistently a no. They're just the biggest complaint seemed to be that the army specific commands are too imbalanced, where some of them are not useful at all and some of them are extremely powerful.
Yeah, absolutely
Especially
agree
like
with that.
getting ferocious charge, so you're +1 to hit. Getting regen on some units, and then like Corey Reynolds brought Force of Nature with air elemental, greater air elementals, and being able to turn off shambling. So like they just get into amazing position, and sure, you can't surge them that turn, but your opponent can't do anything, and then the next turn they're screwed. Like those are pretty
That's pretty
imbalanced.
Yeah, even things. Everything I've found with the +1 seems to make everything better. Like the brutal being +1, you can get as high as like +4.
Like on ogres, yeah.
That all that sort of thing. So at the moment, I think people are. I think it's still the jury is not exactly out, but it's not a hung jury in the slightest. I think it's something that's going to come forward, but we will see. we will see. I'll remember to have the two of you on when we do a bigger thing on that. Um, well, let's get into the army itself.
Sure.
Because we're here to talk about dwarves, and you two being great dwarf players as they are, we'll get through this as fast as we can. So we'll start with the bullwalkers. This is your standard dwarf unit. The headstrong. The throwing massives are possibly a possibility, but phalanx. Is there a reason you guys take this unit? Is this a unit that you normally take?
Probably just in the formation, right, Greg?
Yeah, I haven't played with them before because I don't use the formation.
Yeah, I think
Oddly enough, the formation is extremely good.
It is like one of the top 3, top 5 in the game.
But in that formation, I mean, it'll come up. So we'll say you get 2 regiments of bulwarkers, and the big deal is they drop from melee 4 to melee 3, which is really good with their 15 attacks because they have spears. And phalanx is just it's a powerful rule, especially right now. We're seeing a lot of armies that have cavalry, have flyers, have thunderous charge. So it's useful. And also that couples with the army standard bearer in the formation who has an elite aura. So, you're just piling on benefits.
But it's elite for everything. It's not just
elite for all infantry. Yeah.
All infantry.
What the hell?
Yeah. Even if they're not part of the formation. Yeah. So you could take these guys in hordes too. The formation is just 2 regiments. And I don't hate the idea of the hordes. I don't know. I haven't done it myself. I think
I don't think I've ever seen them on the board in a horde form.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen dwarf bulwarkers in a horde.
Well, we have a guy in the Northeast, Pat O'Neill, who has been playing dwarfs for a long time. And back in, I guess it was in 2nd edition, that the bulwarkers used to have big shield, and he painted up 2 hordes of them at that time, and he still plays with them when he brings his Dwarfs out because they look great. They're actually the Mantic models. He painted them very well, and I get it. If I painted 2 hordes of something and committed all that time and effort, I'd put them on the table too.
Yeah. Well, I know we've got Mike McCready up here who has used them in a horde to great effect. He'll probably tell me later that he didn't. I'm pretty sure that he did, so I'm just going to say that he did anyway. So screw you, Mike. It's all on me.
But right, Greg, it's interesting. Actually, you've never used the formation. I just actually started trying to use them.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't effectively work them and the Horde of Ironclad, which I guess is going to be next. I just feel like you could take away so much from other things that you want to take, depending on what the identity of the army is.
It is a big investment of points, right? Yeah. So you're really leaning into a certain play style, and if it's not what your strength is, I get that.
So speaking of the Ironclad, then is there any reason to take them other than in the formation itself? Like, obviously there are reasons there's no reason not to take anything, honestly.
Right.
But, right now, do either one of you, would you even look at this as something if it wasn't in the formation itself?
You want to take that?
Sure. So again, the formation, you get a horde of them. So a horde of dwarfs with 25 attacks, melee 3, defense 5, that's really good. They are the cheapest, basic infantry option. So, I've seen people take them in regiments and hordes as unlocks. Keith Conroy out in the Northeast will run a regiment with the Orb of Towering Presence to make them unit strength 4 for only 120 points. That's pretty good. Okay. I know not too long ago, Tom Annis, I think he brought to Masters last year, was it an army that had maybe it was 4 hordes of Ironclad. They were his unlocks.
I believe so.
But I just feel they're a little bit cheaper than the other options, but they don't offer that much. Whereas if I invest a little more points, I can get an Iron Guard, which is defense 6 and melee 3 in the regiment size. That's amazing. And they have higher nerve. Or I can get the Bulwarkers for a little bit more points, and they have Phalanx, which is really useful. So in the formation, you'll see them a lot. Outside of that, I don't
Yeah.
I think they're a fine unit, but I just think there's better options.
Yeah. I mean, for the points, they're okay. I like using them for like, if I were to use them, I would probably use them more in regiment form. I feel more comfortable using regiments than hordes with dwarfs. It's just unwieldy and slow. Even with ordered march, it's kind of hard to keep them out of terrain and things of that nature. But having them in regiments, I think end of game, you can claim table sides and control, or some quick points grabbing a token, or something like that. Where other armies might use the harpies or something along those lines, something that can capture an objective late game. With ordered march, Ironclad's pretty good for that role.
Yeah.
So are they, since you mentioned the Iron Guard, we're just going to go straight into those. So already,
did I say Iron Guard? I'm sorry.
No. Greg
I mentioned them as an
Oh,
alternative.
you did.
Greg had mentioned those. So really, the only difference between them is that their standard is being the melee 3 and the defense 6. So I'm guessing.
And the +1 pip and nerve. They're 15.
Okay, that's big.
Yeah.
That really is big. So these are the go-to, let's say, or is this something that is this like where your armies would normally start, or is this something that you're just kind of, it's something to put in for X reason?
For me, Iron Guard is the backbone of my army. I run a minimum of 4 regiments of them, to be honest with you. At Masters, I ran 5. Put some tanks between the Iron Guard all defense 6 line.
Yeah,
it's pretty nasty.
Yeah.
I use 3 regiments of them. It's the same. It's like the backbone of my army. They're just really reliable. They're tough to kill. Defense 6 is one of those rules where the more of it you have, the better it becomes.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just have 1 or 2 units, like your opponent can kind of avoid those and like
can work around
pick
them
on the softer targets. But if the majority of your army is defense 6, like good luck, bro. You probably have a couple units that are equipped to dealing with them, but not your whole army. And especially, if you have Bane Chant floating around, if you have the Vengeance Command. I even run a regiment with the Brew of Strength, which is questionable investment of points, but I always play where whatever my model looks like, that's what it has to be. So I use the old GW hammerers with the big hammers, and I'm like, they have big hammers, it's Brew of Strength. But pumping them up to Crushing Strength 2, like that's pretty good. So,
and Mastiffs all the time, right, Greg?
And Mastiffs all the time, yeah.
Mastiffs all the time. All day, as many as you can put out. They're fantastic. Throw those dogs or the long drunk silvers and the drunk dwarf pirates. As I'm going to look at that every single time now. All right, let's go on to the Iron Watch. So this is our first unit here that actually have crossbows. Piercing 1. Replacing do you prefer them with crossbows? Have you used them? How about you there, Greg? Why don't we start there with you?
Yeah, you can take them with crossbows or rifles. It's the same range either way. You get the extra piercing for the rifles. I think in theory they look okay. I know, again, like Keith Conroy in my region has been a longtime dwarf player, and he's used hordes of them in various games. They're very expensive. They can't move and shoot. So you're kind of investing a lot of points in something that either is not going to move much during the game, or it's going to be moving and then it's wasting the points you spent on firing with it. In melee, they're actually identical to the Ironclad. So
that's right.
They're kind of versatile in that way, but I just think there's better things to spend your points on. You have to spend a lot on them.
Yeah, and if you went for rifles, you're adding on a regiment an additional 15 points, and a horde's an additional 30. So you're getting like this 265 for a horde.
Yeah,
if you chose the rifle. I would agree that crossbows would be the way to go if you're going to use them.
Yeah. Well, that, and it's the first unit we've come up against that don't have mastiffs. Come on, what are these dog hating things? Like, what the hell? All right, let's go on to shield breakers. Now, these are the first ones where most people use the hammerers for. The Crush 2 is their big thing on these. Again, still melee 3, which I think should be less common in armies, but that's just me. What do we normally take these things as? Most of the time, I see them in hordes. What about the pair of you?
I've never used them. Be honest with you,
Never used them?
I want to. I've never used them because when I started, I had this thought in my head that dwarves were going to be heavily armored,
Mm-hmm.
and the defense 4. Same
Not
reason
your thing.
I don't have a lot of faith in my Brock Riders for the same reason. That defense 4 become an easy target. If everything else is defense 6, if someone sees a defense 4, they're like, "Oh, that's some easy points. Let me get that."
Yeah.
But I mean, I have heard of a few people using multiple hordes of shield breakers to great success.
What about you there, Greg?
I use one horde of them. I love them. I mean, melee 3, crushing 2 with 25 attacks, like that's gonna chew through a lot of things.
Yeah.
And the defense 4 is somewhat mitigated by the nerve being 21, 23, and headstrong. In my army, they are like the weak link. I have 2 units that are defense 4. I have them and a troop of berserkers. We'll talk about those coming up as well. And I think in that case, since most of the rest of the army is defense 6, it's actually pretty easy to hide them from enemy shooting or to put stuff in the way so they can't get like double or triple charged where they just get removed in one go.
Right.
Whether that's hanging them a little bit back or putting them behind a hill or across from a forest. I used to run them with the boots of striding just because the footprint is so big and not even necessarily that they're getting many charges off, but sometimes like you need to get them to a position, you have to move through the woods. But I've taken that out recently and found it's okay without it. Yeah, they hit much harder with many more attacks than anything else in the list. So if you can mitigate their weakness of defense 4, then they're pretty good. In the regiments, it's just not enough attacks, I think, to make it worth it.
That was the other thing I was going to ask. Because
12 attacks.
I ever see these is in horde form. I think it's the 14. I think it's the 14, 16 that really kind of throws them off with the defense 4 and that. Well, I think what we actually should talk about is the fact that really, I don't care if the Mastiffs say that they're the Army Special Rule. I mean, really, it's headstrong. I mean, this thing is really bloody good. Like, ordered march. Do we really need both? Like, come on.
Yes.
Come on.
We need them all. We're speed 4, damn it.
Yeah. The scenario play, man, March was such a game changer.
Yeah.
Really,
like, wow, I don't auto lose pillage anymore. Cool.
Yes, exactly.
the amount of times that headstrong has actually turned the entire, like, I'll waver a unit. I'm like, yes, I've wavered that unit, and then, God damn it, no. So I'm wondering if they really do have 2 special army rules. Let's go on to berserkers here. I have never seen a unit of berserkers on the table across from me.
We need to play to remedy that.
Players are fantastic. I would like we do, Greg. We bloody do. If I've got to challenge you next time I'll come down to the States, I'm bloody doing that. That's damn sure. But because I got a chance of playing Joe in a few weeks. So chance.
That's right.
But I've never seen berserkers on the table, and I think these things actually have a place. Like Speed 5 with Wild Charge, correct? They are
Wild Charge D3, yeah.
Yeah, they do have the Wild Charge on them. So I think these things come a lot.
I think for a dwarf.
Well, I think these things should have the leaper rule too, like being able to jump over. I honestly do.
That'd be amazing.
Wouldn't that be cool? You can see this, right? You can see these stunty little legs like jumping over like hordes of people and getting into
just jumping and screaming with their
Let's these are only a troop and regiment. However, they do come with Slayer D6. And it's one of the few units that do not change between a horde and a troop or something like that. They always get Slayer D6. So if you do take these, Greg, so I'll let you start, but do you take these in a troop at any point in time?
Yeah, I take them as a troop. I would definitely consider regiments, except they are irregular, so they don't unlock,
Yeah.
which makes it more of a hard sell. But I use the troop as like a thick chaff. 105 points for a unit that's dash 15 nerve, like that alone is quite good return on investment. Yeah, their
Mhm.
defense 4, but you can kind of like you can sit them because they're faster than your infantry. You can sometimes sit them behind the infantry, and then when you're ready to screen, they can run
Yeah.
forward. They have ordered march, so you can pivot. I mean, before that rule came out, I used to run them with skirmishers boots. Ordered march isn't exactly the same as nimble, but it's kind of redundant to pay the points for the boots, so I just run them naked now. And they can also sometimes they can sit. They're the cheapest unit aside from like a war engine in my army, so that if I don't need them to screen, they can sit in an objective, they can guard a flank and hold something up for a turn longer than your opponent wants them to. They have 15 attacks. It's only hitting on 4s with no crushing, unless the vengeance if it's a counter charge. But sometimes just the volume of attacks, they can chew through enemy chaff or heroes that they put in the way, stuff like that. So
Yeah. Plus the
I
vicious.
yeah, and they're vicious. So I've always found, unless you put them in a place where they just get shot off at the beginning of the game, they're quite useful.
Yeah.
Well, the fact that they're also a dash, I think, really does help.
It's
Yeah.
really nice. Yeah.
So let's go on a little bit longer here. We got Rangers. Now, I'm a big fan of Rangers, mostly because I play elves, and anything that shoots is a good thing. Um, but you crush one in Pathfinder on a dwarf unit,
Yeah.
sign me up. I do find these are a bit on the expensive side, but that's just me. What about you, there, Joe? Have you looked at these?
Oh, yeah. I've looked at them. I think the first tournament I played in, I played a gentleman who actually played 2 or 3 units of these Rangers. I haven't
Mhm.
seen them since on the table, but they are very expensive. I think you're paying a lot for the scout, you know. 170 points for a regiment's
It's a
a
bit of
lot
an
for 14, 16 nerve, and defense 4 as well. So you keep them concealed, you keep them in terrain. They'll have some staying power, but once they're engaged, I think they're done.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good unit. It's just a lot of points.
I'm
I
surprised. Sorry, I'm surprised it's not a heavy crossbow with a piercing instead of the crush. I honestly
or
am.
piercing. Yeah.
I mean, they're so good in hand to hand. They couldn't give them a crossbow too, with a pierce.
Yeah.
Maybe
I
100.
I like the Rangers a lot, but I do think they have the price is a problem, and I think it could be fixed either by giving the regiment unit strength 3. Like, this will always be a point of contention with me. Like, why do the elves have a unit like this that's similarly costed better in almost every way and is unit strength 3, but ours is only unit strength 2? Like, that irks me.
Yeah.
And if they were a little bit cheaper and they stayed the way they are, I would take troops. I think Scout is a really powerful rule. I've used it to good effect with my forces of nature, with things like regiments of forest shamblers. And I would love to have something similar in the dwarfs, but to get even one or a couple troops of them is just so many points for something that's going to die to a stiff breeze.
Well, and it's the reason why we won there. Well, right now I think Gladestock is now unit strength 2, and
they did reduce their unit strength. Thank heavens! I told you I haven't played in a while. So.
Yeah. But the other reason why is because we don't, if we don't fall in the puddle, we're fine. We just stand up and we don't die. I think that's the other.
Where do you think the sweet spot is as far as the price goes on a troop? 120 or 125?
Yeah, I think right now it's 135.
Yeah, it's 135 now.
I think that 120 or 125 would be fine. They're good. Like, they have a bunch of good rules. It's just the way I would envision using them. I would probably have 2 troops of them, and 2 troops for 270 points. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's more than a whole of anything else, and it's only 2 unit strength with defense 4 and low nerve.
Yeah. It's not like these things don't serve. The fact that they do have Scout and they've got Pathfinder and they've got a lot of versatility, which I think is the other reason why they're up in the points there. They're not a bad unit in the slightest. It's just that I think they're sometimes overlooked for what they can and can't do. But what you two are just saying there make perfect sense.
Right. And again, like the same thing with Berserkers, if they were, because they're irregular, if they were an unlocking unit, I might consider taking regiments of them. I think they're unlocking in the free dwarf list.
I believe they are.
Yeah.
Well, let's go on to sharpshooters, everybody's favorite thing except for mine. I can't stand these goddamn sons of bitches. So why shouldn't they be defense 5, and what the hell has anything got to do with that? No. I really do hate the fact that they're defense 5. I think it's God damn
You think that's bad? Talk about the claw shots.
I was just going to say
that. And they get rallying, so they
five.
have higher nerve than the sharpshooters. Get out of here.
Well, until they change that, you have to leave a
But you're right. They both should be defense 4. In addition to being defense 5, they both have 36-inch range and pierce 2. They do have reload, but I've never seen this this be a problem.
It's not a problem.
All right, there, Joe. Why do you always take 3 of these?
Yeah, I think the question is, it's not whether you take them or not. It's just how many.
How many?
Yeah. For most of my time as a dwarf player, I've been taking 3. I did switch to 4.
Oh God. You sleep at night?
Deeply. Yes. The only problem is that the shooting lanes become a problem. You know, when you just have too much of them, right? I had a game at Masters where I don't think I even shot them in the first 2 rounds because my opponent did such a great job of where I had to stick them. I had to keep moving. I mean, a troop of them every turn's gonna, on average, get you 1 to 2 wounds. You know, if you can concentrate your shooting, you're getting 5-6 wounds. You can get a waiver round 1.
Yep.
You know,
I can't wait when we play. I'm going to take you up on that. Then they only ever do 1 to 2 wounds.
Oh, we absolutely.
I have a guy
try foul if they get more.
I have a guy devastate my shit. I mean, it's why I stopped playing some certain things like big dragons and stuff. But sorry, please continue.
Yeah, I just think the world of them. You know, and now with Ordered March late game, they can get up and score and invade. They can pick up tokens. The utility is incredible for them.
Yeah.
Well, the fact that they score, does that make them better than a War Machine there, Greg? Like, do you think
well, War Engines now, interestingly, they did get unit strength 1. So they're, you know, actually like pretty decent in that role too. But the sharpshooters are more maneuverable. They also, you know, if enemies charge them, they don't get triple attacks. So, you know, like over the weekend, I had a game against Order of the Green Lady, and a troop got charged by a Pegasus, and we just sat there for a little while because 3 attacks, like a defense 5, as you pointed out, like it's actually not that. Whereas if it was a war engine, it likely would be taken off much faster.
Yeah.
I run 2 troops of them. I could definitely see the utility in having 3 or even 4. The big thing too is like, sometimes some games you get to put them in the right spot where they have clear shooting lanes, and the 36 inches means you're firing every turn unless you're late game trying to move for scenario play. But even in games where you have to put them like behind your line, if you're fighting an army that's got cavalry, that's got large infantry, monstrous infantry, monsters, etc., like you can shoot over your infantry sometimes with no penalty, or even if it's the -1 for cover, because your range is 4. You're still doing work. So they're quite good.
All right.
I certainly would not leave home without them.
One final note, though, it also depends what region you play in, because I believe, like in your region, right, in the Northeast, the terrain seems to be bigger.
Yeah.
Than it would be in the Mid-Atlantic. So we have more accessible shooting lanes. I know when I have on occasion gone to Northeast tournaments, I felt like, well, you know, it just becomes a lot more difficult to make them useful.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's lots of things that are bigger here in the Northeast, including ego.
Leave it at that. Fill in the
Yeah,
blank.
you went there.
Yeah.
Let's go on to Earth Elementals. Now I'm not sure on if I used to see these a lot more. Now they're not taking as much. The big thing with these is, of course, they are shambling. They are defense 6. They are
Brutal.
a dash 15 or a dash 18, and they do come with brutal. Again, Pathfinder, all good stuff. But the more we've gotten into this edition, the less I seem to be seeing those. Now, Joe, you don't use these in your list, I believe.
No, I've never used them. I came on the scene here when Alex had made Brox and Rocks famous.
Yeah.
But I think now a few years later, you've got Ordered March, and if you can get access to the Defense 6, have smaller footprints, not have to worry about shambling. Shambling, you got to dedicate a lot of points into that with, getting a mage and everything else, if you want to try to get some flanks. But I've always found the Iron Guard to be a better option. Although I think they look beautiful on the board.
I think their height 3 also kind of stops.
And there's more unlocks with them.
Yeah, because they are a horde.
Yeah.
I do think
I run one horde of them. And I run them with Brew of Sharpness so that they hit on 3s.
Yeah.
I find that to be a money maker. They have killed so many things. Because as Joe pointed out, if you're taking them, you also need to invest in the Stone Priest so you can have Surge. And I give the Stone Priest a Bane Chant and a Conjurer Staff, and he's got this cute little rule that pairs with them where if you cast Surge on them, you can also hit them with the Bane Chant. So 18 attacks on 3s with Crushing 2 and Brutal is really good. Again, outside of like a horde of Shield Breakers, that's the most damage you're going to see in melee.
You're making me think about them.
Yeah. And it's expensive, like 265, I think, for the horde with the item, but they're really hard to shift. And again, I have so much defense 6 on the board. It's not like they're necessarily standing out as the one target.
That's true.
So I like them a lot, but I wouldn't use more than one horde, and I wouldn't take them without the Brew of Sharpness, because you run into issues then where they hit zombies and they stick there for a million turns because they just don't get enough hits to chew through it.
And your crush means nothing at that point.
No, and then you're sad.
And you're really sad.
Well, I'm like if I see Earth Elementals, I'm like, cool. I'll be able to hold up. That sharpness is a pain. Please, no one else do that. That's a terrible thing you're saying on here. Well, since we're talking about the Earth Elemental, why don't we talk about the Earth Elementals? Let's talk about the Greater. Either one of you use this? Like Joe, you haven't even looked at this.
Yeah. I told you before we started this, when you asked me to do this army review, I've been playing Dwarfs for almost 2 years now, and I've maybe played a third of all the units available.
Yeah.
I got stuck into one design, but I've played against armies that have the Greater Earth Elemental. Harry, he plays him to great effect.
Yeah.
The Crush 3 makes you so jealous. The base size allows you to get into a lot of good positions. I'm a big fan of the Greater Earth Elemental, actually.
Is there in any scenario that you might switch out your horde for a greater here, Greg? Or
I need the horde for the unlock. In my list, I have a Greater Earth Elemental that I play in my Forces of Nature, and I love it. It's one of my favorite pieces. 12 attacks, even on 4s with Crushing 3 and Brutal, and he's dash 19 with defense 6 But there's a difference, right? In like free dwarfs or nature, you have better access to healing. And so those guys will stick around forever, really.
Pretty much, yeah.
But it's hard, like, I don't know, when you're looking at something to fill that role, I think the Steel Behemoth and Gallic are somewhat similar, but they are a little more versatile because they have the ranged attack, and they just kind of do something that's kind of the same but a little bit better. So I love the Great Earth Elemental, but I just, in the Imperial Dwarf list, I don't, unless you're designing around it, I don't think it's.
I think you're running a different type
right.
of army if you're running. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's continue on here. We're going to go with the Brock Riders, which at one point in time was the bane of my existence. I 26 attacks is just a lot of bloody attacks. The dash it's such an annoying thing. And now they vicious and vengeance. The vengeance was the biggest thing to be added to them. They don't hit very hard. The thunder one on the way in, woohoo sort of thing. But the vengeance that can, I think that's a lot better on this unit than what people would expect there to be. Well, why don't we start there with you again, Joe? A little bit of speed and a little bit of hitting power.
Yeah, I can't tell you. Oh, and you got to give them boots, right? The boots of striding you have to put on them because you got to make sure you at least get that thunder, and you don't want to be hitting
off. Yeah,
right. So this is a unit that hitting on 4s is always an adventure, right?
Against you should have 13 hits. It sounds great on paper.
It sounds great, right? Defense 4, maybe average 10 hits. Defense 5, maybe 6. You're really not breaking anything. Maybe 6 to 8 wounds you get on a defense 5 unit. And, the vengeance is going to help them now win some of those battles.
Right, what about you there, Greg?
So I've never used them, but I've played against them a lot. They're a unit whose rules have changed quite a bit. They used to have significantly higher nerve.
Yeah, they're 22, right?
They were a dash 22 on the regiment. Now it's a dash 18. That's 4 points. It's a tough pill to swallow, but they did now get the vengeance, and that's nice. They're not a unit that's gonna almost ever survive a game. So you're hoping that they're gonna, take some stuff out and earn their points back before you lose them. And they're certainly faster than anything else in the army with speed 8. So there's a reason to take them. Absolutely. It just doesn't happen to fit my play style, but can you make them work? Definitely. Even in troops too, I think, again,
they become
being not like thick chaff roll for 125-15. So 20 more points than the troop of the guys on foot. But, at that point they are faster. They're a little scarier in melee because they have the thunderous, slightly less attacks, but they make up for it with thunderous, and they're a great target at the troop size for the skirmisher boots.
I think that they're good for the fact that they've got the height, and they'll die when you kind of want them to because they're a dash. So they'll be able to take the first round of shooting in that, and then because of their speed, maybe just sort of right up in your face, deal with me.
Yeah,
and that might be just enough. All right, let's go on to the dogs throwing Long Drong and his pirates. Is there? I think I've got one buddy who he would take dogs without throwing dogs, and I'm like, there's no point. There is no point in not taking dogs without throwing dogs.
There is a point sometimes when you need that.
Okay, Mr.
15 points.
Yeah,
and that's the first thing that comes.
Can't afford it. Yeah.
So these things, obviously, they're basically a screen. They're a nice little, little swarm. The fact that they can take massive, it really does make me smile.
Boggles the mind.
Yeah. Why wouldn't they be able to?
Hunting pack with throwing massives. I don't know.
They're throwing themselves, in which case it's just like self-flagellation at that point.
So I think in like Mantic lore, I think there's like a handler who's like got all the dogs, and I don't know.
He lets go of one of the leashes, like, oh god,
yeah, let him out. Yeah, I don't know. They're cheap, right? Like you can't get a 65-point speed 6 unit anywhere else in the Dwarfs. And they're surprisingly high nerve for their points value at 11-13. So sometimes that throws people off where it takes, a little bit more than you would expect to actually route them. I personally don't use them, but I've seen a lot of people use them very well.
Yeah, no, they
They're
definitely.
also the cheapest delivery service for the throwing mastiffs, and because they're faster than the the foot infantry, yeah,
Yeah.
they can get into the right spot easier.
If I use them, I'm using one.
Mhm.
And more times than not, I'm not having dogs throw dogs. It's just the 65 points. I'll put them off on a flank with a unit of Brock Riders. Um,
Mhm.
I'll use them to possibly, get in front just to take an initial charge. So,
Yeah.
and
Pure
I
cat.
run them probably with a Dwarf Lord too, all on one flank.
Yeah.
But that's a nice combination of units, and the Mastiffs can end up taking the charge if you need them to. The surprising thing that takes people, if you are lucky enough to get a flank on them, like if you engage with the Brock Riders and then you're able to come in on a flank, if it's a cav unit, you get
Yeah, they
plus
get crushing one.
and all of a sudden you got
Made
18
that mistake.
shots in the flank with crush one, and if you have a Bane chant nearby, all of a sudden, oh boy,
Yep.
it can add up.
All right, let's go on to the Flame Belcher, which it's just a good
I
one.
love this unit.
It's really good.
I mean, how can you not? I'm sorry, but how can you not? This was always my favorite thing when I played Dwarves way back when. But yeah, 15 attacks is fantastic. The range is kind of short, but
18-inch range, right?
Yeah, because it can move and shoot, so
Got
18
steady aim.
inches.
steady
Yeah.
aim. What the hell? It's a flamethrower. It's not a cannon. It is. It. I
Yeah.
guess it says Belcher.
All right. When you take it away from the trombones,
Yeah.
then you can take it away
Yeah.
from.
Then come talk to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
I've
you
never
guys.
used
Are
them. I'm trying to figure out how to get them in my list for March of Death.
I have not used them, but again, going back to my buddy Keith, he's for
Yeah.
years when he brings dwarfs taken three of them, and like when I play my ogres, like because I don't rely on a million shield breakers, like they are the bane of my existence
Yeah.
because it's just 45 shots with shattering hitting on fours, like oof. They can
I have been
do a
trying
lot
to
of
figure
damage.
out how to get multiple in, because it's you're fighting. If you don't use hordes, right?
Mhm.
Which I
Your
don't.
unlocks are a premium. Yeah.
Right. So I've got 5 regiments in my army, maybe 6 at 2,500, which means now you have 6 slots for characters, for tanks,
Yeah.
everything else. And, so it's a 1-for-1 ratio. It's just so hard to try to figure out how to get them in. And I don't want to just use one.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Going on that, we've got the Iron Belcher cannons, which we don't see the cannons much anymore. But again, this is another unit where I would suspect that you would want more than one to be able to shoot out. It's 48-inch range with blast D3+1. I mean, Pierce 3, like this thing can do some serious damage and shattering. The grape shot has always been sort of a nice little, you're close enough to be able to use it sort of thing. But I don't see these very often. If anything, I see them cannons used as other things, like as a flame cannon, as a mortar, as a something else. But I don't really see these things in any other way. Neither one of you, I don't think, use these in your army at all.
Do you see anyone using this in the Northeast, Greg?
I haven't. Like, it's one of those things. I don't like using things that I can't rely on to like do something every turn.
Yeah.
So it's 2 shots to hit on 5s, right?
Yeah.
If opponents are
Or
smart,
100s.
it'll be 6s for whatever you're trying to shoot at. And maybe one turn you get lucky and you get 2 hits and your blasts are high and you just obliterate something. But you can't count on that. Like most of the time it'll probably do nothing. And I don't like that unpredictability. And to your point, Ben, like, yeah, if you invest in 2 or 3, then maybe you're okay. Like odds are that one of them's going to do something, but it's a lot of points. And even they do have unit strength 1 now, which is nice, but you're not moving them if you're going to shoot. I
would find them a lot more useful without massives, because really what I would use them for is to take out something that was big and nasty and all the rest of this. Whereas you fly a dragon around the side of one of your armies. Three of those units turn sideways and throw dogs at the thing, and now either the dragon is knocked down or it's severely wounded or there's something else going on. I just find there's a lot more uses for it than just the fact that it's a 48-inch range
Yeah.
doesn't always do what it needs to. Now that being said, the organ gun here with Pierce 2 and 12 attacks, like that seems a little more there's a little more stability in this sort of a gun. Like taking two of these, you can riddle through a bunch of shit. Like I always forget these things are ranged 24 inches. Like you can be standing on your lines and have somebody move forward and just absolutely obliterate a unit or two with these things. Like something like that, I would find more useful than a standard cannon. But I guess it's depending on what you're really going after. Is there anything we really need to say other than the fact that the organ gun is just a brilliant piece that can be like it does have reload. You can't just turn the thing and shoot it. That's its only drawback. Like, sorry, Joe.
So I run two organ guns. I'm the only dwarf player I know that uses organ guns. And generally, when opponents see my list, they're like, "Organ guns, really?" And they kind of like chuckle to themselves. I mean, I've shared some points in my list that again, like might be considered like not the most efficient, but I build lists based on the models I like, and I don't like things that like don't represent the rules. So I think organ guns look great. And so I painted them up and I use them as organ guns, and people will be like, just take them as flame belchers. Like nobody cares. I'm like, yeah, but I care. But that being said, right? Like 12 shots on 5s, even if it goes to 6s, you should get some hits. And with piercing 2, you should get some damage. And every once in a while, you're just like, oh, I hit you 7 times out of 12 on 5s because they're dice and they do that. And like the look on someone's face when they said like, oh, fuck. Like,
yeah, really.
It's going to be a problem. And, the argument I used to get into with Mike Rossi, not an actual argument, but just, going back and forth on dwarf list design, you'd be like, yeah, but for 10 more points, you get the sharpshooters and they have unit strength and sure they have fewer attacks, but they're going to hit more reliably and yada, yada, yada. Well, now the organ guns have the unit strength. So that I found in the last event to actually be quite useful. And again, like if your opponents sleep on them, they end up doing some real work for you.
Yeah. And this is kind of like the identical unit that Liga Bordia has, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, and it's more of a viable option, I think, in that army because there's less choices.
Fewer things competing for that
spot.
Yes, yeah,
exactly. So, I mean, I think that's what this unit probably suffers from is that we have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to different types of
the fact that dwarf
options. But, yeah.
The fact of the dwarf army, like when you think dwarf, you think war machines, you think long rifles and that sort of thing, and the fact that a lot of these dwarf armies are coming out and they're like cannons, who needs that shit? Like, what the fuck? Anyway, let's go on here to the what is that? Juran Bombard. Yeah, this is basically just a mortar. Like this is more or less just a mortar. Again, it's just 2 shots. 48 inches. This is better than the cannon, in my opinion, because the ignore obscured, and again, the piercing 3 and the fact it's 48 inches and can be standing behind your lines and just shoot over. Again, it's a war machine. It does its job. It hits on 5s. Now, the one thing that we haven't talked about at this point, after going through all these, is we haven't talked about the engineer himself, which makes all of these things elite.
A little bit better,
yeah. The Warsmith has an aura of elite ranged for Warsmith and Iron Watch only. So that does actually affect the infantry unit we talked about a while ago.
It does. We had a guy up here.
It's their Iron Watch. The guys with the crossbows or the guns.
And so he does not help the war machines?
He does.
He does.
He does either.
War machines are Warsmith.
Warsmith. Okay.
Yeah, so he does actually help them with that. And
range.
Yeah, so it's almost like if you're going to take something like this, then you definitely need to take like a warsmith. Yeah, well, I shouldn't say you definitely need to take. It would make more sense to take one because it's just making all that stuff more reliable.
Yeah,
We
the
do have
thing with
player up here.
the Warsmith is that he is 95 points. So he
Worth
is
it.
similarly costed to a war engine.
Yeah.
So the argument sometimes is like, well, why not just take another war engine? But he does have 4 shots with a rifle of his own, right? And
Yeah.
again, going to Keith's army with the 3 flame belchers, he would take a Warsmith with the freaking
Oh God, yeah.
the Sacred Horn. So now it's a 9-inch aura, and it's like 45 shots with elite hitting on force. Like at that point, it doesn't matter that they don't have piercing because it's just weight of numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think
he can be good, but it's definitely situational.
Well, we've got a guy up here named Seth who did an army like this and scared the living shit out of me. And the only reason why I beat him was because I picked up 2 tokens on 1 unit. We were playing Dilute, and I just ran to the opposite corner where he couldn't
get the heck out of range.
My entire army, other than 1 other model and this unit, was dead. His entire army was still alive. Like the only reason why I won was because I'm like, I am running, and that is it. I put everything else in front of it, and I'm like, shoot these things, please. So, yeah, these are great things. These are, but again, it's just kind of weird, dwarfs, and not taking war engines at this point. All right, let's get on to the battle driller. Well, these are weird little bastards, aren't they? They're also considered to be individuals. We were talking about them earlier there, Joe. Jeff Trace famously took these.
Trace really fancies these. Yeah.
He took these and put, what is it called? Host Shadow Beast on them. And people were like, wait, what? Like, that is a fantastic thing. That is ridiculous. Brutal 2. What the hell? Crush 1. I have not read the Brutal 2 thing before.
No, Brutal 2 is their secret sauce.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Really good.
All right.
So if you don't have Host Shadow Beast, I mean, you're going to get like 2 to 3 wounds.
Yeah.
You know, and then the Brutal brings it to 5, which is nice.
But still, D6 plus 6, I would take, if I played Dwarf still, I would take these things. I think these things look fantastic. I would lose all the time, but I'd be like, guy, we my balance joker. Obviously, we're going to talk about the battle drill. We have to talk about the special character, the guy everybody bloody hates, and that's Faber. Am I thinking of the same guy?
No, Faber's not an upgrade of the battle driller. He's an upgrade of the steel juggernaut.
That's the thing. Is so. Forget I said that because we're going to cut this out.
That's fine.
Now, have you ever used the battle driller, Greg?
Yeah, I take 1 in my army.
I would love to see your list.
I think it's fantastic. It's the biggest limitation on it is that it's straight up movement 4. So usually you think like individual on a cavalry base, like I'll just go over here and then I'll be good next turn. Like I'll be able to charge when I need to charge. And then if you don't really like think it through and be super precise, you're like, oh crap, 8 inches, I'm out of range. Because 8 inches is much more of a threat on a horde of shield breakers because you're measuring closest to closest than a little guy on a cavalry base.
Right.
So I find like if you want to use him effectively, you have to be very, you have to be thinking multiple turns ahead in where you want him to go and what you want him to do. But he does do even just the 1. Like, so I don't have Host Shadow Beast with just 1 of them. If I took 3 like Trace did, then I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
But I'll either put him in a place where, he can't get charged. And then if you crash into my lines and you don't break me, I'm countercharging and I'm adding him in, and that extra couple points of damage and the Brutal 2 can swing it in your favor.
Yes.
You do have to be careful with that because then if you don't break your target, or you do, but you don't like reform appropriately, you run into a situation where your opponent can charge the battle driller, kill him, and overrun and hit your other unit because he's an individual. But what I do maybe more often with him is I like slow down people's flanking maneuvers by running him on a flank and like putting him behind a piece of obscuring terrain that's in sort of in the middle of the table, whether that's like impassable or a forest where like you can't see him, But as soon as you either go into that forest or you creep around, he can see you. And he's going to charge you, and he's going to hold you up for a turn longer than you want to be held up. And I'm only spending 75 points to do that, and your 250 point unit of cavalry has to slow down. And sometimes that's like game breaking.
Yes.
So he can serve a bunch of different roles. If you have the unlocks for him, I think he's fantastic. But the movement 4 is his biggest weakness.
Right.
Yeah, I think this guy would be great in between lines and doing all the things that you've just said there. Like, especially the brutal 2. The brutal 2 goes, even if he misses,
so good.
It's still there. Like, he's already putting 2 points of damage in, like, regardless of what happens. All right, let's go down to the Steel Behemoth, everybody's favorite chariot. No, this is a chariot base, right? Am I not?
Yeah,
right?
It is chariot. It's a monster on a chariot base.
Yeah. So this is Crush 3 again. Headstrong on this bloody thing. Why, God, why? I mean, come on. Oh, the amount of times. This is normally taken as Gallic if you're going to take the 1. I guess I guess it's not an auto include to upgrade it as as Gallic. But I've fought as many as 3 of these in an army and hated myself for ever showing up to that tournament. No, I'm kidding. I haven't done that. But yeah, these things are big. These things are nasty. But chariot base, that makes it a little more difficult to maneuver and a little more difficult.
That causes problems.
It can, yeah.
Yeah.
If things get tight in the scrum, sometimes you can't get the charge off you want because you just can't pivot. There's no room.
Yeah.
I find the Crush 3 being a bit on the high side, but that's just me. What about you there, Joe? You just got Gallic, or
well, to piggyback on what Greg just said, it does make reforming hard if you're going in there with a regiment or something else. You have to sidestep, and you have to be able to turn. You got to pray that you get a good sidestep.
Yeah.
I love them. I mean, I've never run more than 2. To me, it's like 800 points for 3 unit strength is
that's a lot.
It's a lot of points. I know everyone will be rolling their eyes, but what I'd love to see here is if they would go to unit strength 2.
You're paying a lot of points for them, so
yeah, for 295 for 1 unit strength. But I mean, the Iron Resolve aura, very inspiring.
Yeah.
It doesn't have steady aim, but it has a longer range on the shot.
And it range 4, so
yes. And and if you move, it's 5. That's fine. I think they went out of their way to make the difference between the normal Steel Behemoth and Gallic's Fury as confusing as possible. Every rule is different here, with the exception of melee, right? But different. The ranged attacks are 12 on the regular, and then 18 on Gallic's Fury. Pierce 1 versus Pierce 2. One has steady aim, one doesn't.
Yeah. It's a bit much to be changing it all over the place like that. But I guess they were trying to make it better because of the upgrades already with the aura and the very inspiring and all the other stuff. It was already
that's to me is the number 1 auto include in the army is Gallic's upgrade.
Yeah.
Well, all right.
Yeah, I just run the 1 and I run it as Gallic. Like as a concept, I don't love running unique units. But I would not field a dwarf army without Gallic's Fury or Faber Ironheart. They're just too freaking good. Again, in like conversations I've had with Mike Rossi about list design, he's like, Gallic, but he's 295 points. Like, it's so many points. And it is, but he does so many things between the very inspiring, the Iron Resolve aura, the really potent range shooting, especially like I mentioned 2 organ guns. And so he basically has an organ gun with an 18-inch range. But if you don't move him, he's hitting on 4s. If you do, it's then at 36 shots with piercing 2 hitting on 5s. Like that's really good. And then he's just hard to shift. And I have found in games where you need to trade pieces, opponents will sometimes they get that look in their eye when they have an opportunity to maybe kill Gallic. And I'm sitting back thinking please commit all of these resources to kill my unit strength 1, because once we start trading, I'm winning in this trade-off. I'm happy at certain points to give him up because depending on the scenario, it might make sense.
Absolutely.
And if you don't want to give them up, it's so easy to just put stuff on the sides and they have to charge you in the front, 1 or 2 units with defense 6, a break on a 19. It's not easy. So
he is hard to protect when you're going up against an army with a lot of flying. You can't protect that. Yeah. And it's just too long a base.
Because your units next to him aren't deep enough. Yeah,
exactly right. Exactly right.
The way I normally deal with them is I will try and trick somebody into charging with Gallic and something else. I'll put up something I know they'll want to put more than 1 unit in, and the mistake is always when you put the 2 in, and then it's okay. How do I pivot this thing?
Yeah, and when you get stuck,
and then I'll get your flank, and that's what the way I would normally I try and do it, but it doesn't always work, and it doesn't always work in my favor. However. Damn good thing. Both of them, if you take a regular or if you take Gallic, there's no reason not to take one of these anyway. All right, we will go down to we're getting into heroes. There we go. How about into the Berserker Lord, who crush 1 and is just a little bastard and has my favorite amount of attacks. I love things with 7 attacks. I think these things are great. I think it should be more often. A dash 16. This thing can't. The Berserker Lord can't take a. I thought he could take a. Oh, he can't take a.
You can mount them up.
Right you take a rock. Yep.
Yeah.
But you lose the white charge.
Yeah, but you just have a consistent 16-inch charge instead of 11 to 13.
Which is 7 attacks, 16-inch charge, crush 1, like a dash 16. This is just a missile. This is an absolute missile. Have you two got anything to add to this guy other than the fact that he's great?
Dale Motley used to run him all the time, mounted.
Yeah.
And he was an absolute terror.
Is there a reason to take him without the other than points? Is there a reason to take him without the mount, or is this sort of something that you would always take a mount with?
You just need the delivery system, right? You need to get it in there sooner. It needs to be a disruptor.
Yeah.
I've only taken him once, and I took him on foot. It was a model choice, the old GW Demon Slayer, giant moon encrusted axe with jewels. Come on. And the whole time I was like, man, I wish he was on a Brock. But even still, it's just the dash 16 is on an individual really hard for things to chew through. If you're playing him smart, nobody's sniping him with shooting. So you get him into combat where you want. I know a couple of years ago now, it was a Masters where Nate Clevenger ran 3 Berserker Lords on Brock, and I didn't play him or see any of his matches, but I know he played very well and plays highly. And so it just comes again to this issue of unlocks in the Dwarf army, and where do you want to put your points, because you can't get everything.
Right.
But they are definitely a great option.
Yeah. 110 points is pretty damn good for this guy. 140 with the mount. Is this the guy that you basically you're sticking the axe of the giant slayer, your side of the harvester sort of thing?
You certainly could, yeah.
All right, let's go on here. We've got the dwarf standard bearer. Now, this is the For the King thing where you get to re-roll the headstrong. I believe that. Have either one of you tried this guy in any way, shape, or form?
For the King, that's the re-roll of the headstrong?
That's the re-roll, yeah.
I have on a couple of occasions. It just never sticks into my list.
Well, he's in the formation, so when
I don't use the formation.
They get him.
Right.
Yeah, neither do I.
Yeah, I think you got the 2 dwarf players that don't use the formation on your podcast here.
Yeah, I would
That may have been by
Imagine if you
design.
grab 10, competitive dwarf players and ask them, 9 out of 10 would be using the formation.
Yeah.
Except I got 2 of 10, and both of these guys don't. And they're probably 2 of the better ones, because it sure as hell ain't that Rossi guy who doesn't seem to play anywhere.
I'll tell you, I really wish I had this guy at Dead of Winter the other weekend, because I was 0 for 7 on headstrong rolls from the
I've had games
beginning
like
to
that.
the end of the tournament. I did not pass a single one.
Oh, damn, really?
On a 3+. Maybe with the reroll, I wouldn't have been in the right place at the right time, or I would have still failed it. Who knows?
That's the only thing I would have to say against this thing, is that even if you rolled it and then you got the reroll and you roll it again and you still fail it, like, that's just going to be a feel bad thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, the first time I took the formation, I went to a 1-day up by Loaded Dice, Chet's group. And I think I failed a headstrong test 5 times and the reroll 5 times.
Oh, God. Oh.
And I'm like, why am I taking this?
All right. Well, let's move on. Is there anything you give other than Bane Chance, or anything else that you would even think about getting this guy?
You could throw a heal on him, or fireball.
So the standard things that we would put on put on the standard bearer: the heal, the Bane Chant, the sacred, the horn. All right, let's go on to the Dwarf Lord, which has, I think, one of the better upgrades. I really do like the fact that you can make this guy very inspiring. For 10 points, that's nothing. I really do like that. Again, 5 attacks, boo. But defense 6, he's a king. I'm a bit everything's got 5 attacks. When I see 7, I just wonder why. I can understand the Berserk Lord, but why the hell does the ogre little bastard goblin on this little rat who runs around and he gets 7 attacks? I could go on for an hour about that, so we won't. but
I just don't ever see a reason to use this guy when you have exposure to Garrick Heavy Hand.
Unless you're taking the wings of Honey Maze.
That's
what I see. And I don't think that character archetype is necessarily as useful. It used to be everybody you didn't leave home without the flying individual, because many armies took the 3 war engines. But it's still useful, because even at defense 5, he's still tough to shift, and at that point, flying around, he is the fastest thing you're going to get.
That's true. I've never used Wings of the Honey Maze. Again, I'm very limited in my. I tend to stick to something that works, but I remember early on Wings. I used to see it all the time. You don't really see it much.
Yeah,
that's probably due to what you said. There's not a lot of war machines anymore.
Yeah, I think it was more put up here. It was more put into even hordes of bowmen and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Just because they were never going to kill him. He was never going to die with the headstrong and everything else. He was never going to die. So, I think I started to see him. I watch a lot of stuff from overseas and down you guys in the States and that, and started to see him make a little bit of a resurgence over in England. There was a couple of guys that started to take him again. So I'm wondering if everything is reciprocal. At some point, it all comes back to being good. So we'll see.
We can talk about Garrick Heavyhand now, because he's the
sure, we can talk about Garrick Heavyhand,
the unique version of the king. And to Joe's point, it's if you want a guy to just be on foot and bolster your lines, you pay 40 more points, but he has Radiance of Life, is very powerful. Yep. And he has regen 5 himself, so he's not gonna die unless something crazy happens. I
don't remember ever losing him in a fight, but I only started taking him about 5-6 months ago. But I don't think I've ever gotten him in serious trouble. Everything else,
he's a bastard. He's
really
good.
Crush 3, why?
Giving you 4 or 5 wounds a turn back.
He's got a heavy hand. It's crushing great when he hits you.
I want somebody to model just a dwarf with this massive freaking gauntlet on there. I'm waiting for that. I mean, okay, you can only take 150 points. Great investment there.
Yeah, you only want one. Yeah.
You only need one. Like,
Yeah.
he's just gonna kick you in the nuts. That's basically all he's gonna do. Radiance of Life is so good in that army. So
Mhm.
If you're going to take 2 tanks, he's really good to put close by the tank that is not Gallic.
Yep.
Because he can't get the Iron Resolve.
oh,
The other
shit.
tank.
Yeah.
Well,
Because Iron
okay.
Resolve is dwarf only.
Right.
But Garrick Heavy Hands Radiance of Life is anybody. So if you do have, like, they're both next to the Iron Guard, they're healing 2 points
Around. Yeah.
around. Like,
Not right. It's just not right. Right. Well, after that terrifying thought, let's go on to the Stone Priest here. I mean, everybody's favorite priest. Again, Radiance of Life, great little thing. This guy made a huge resurgence. I think this is going to go away now with the thing everybody was taking was this celestial restoration and doing
the command dice.
with the command dice. But even before that, just taking that and doing a lot of heal. So this guy is gone are the days where it's just Bane Chant and Surge all the time for this guy. Do you guys take him? Is this something that would make a? I mean, this is not a bad piece, especially being able to for 25 more points, 75 points. Here's a little bastard walking around giving you Radiance of Life. That's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to how you want to run the army, and the amount of unlocks that where you want to dedicate them to.
Yeah.
I went from having an army that everything scored, and then when I did the formation, I ended up I had the standard bearer, I had this mage, I had Garrick Heavy Hand, and all of a sudden now I'm running 3 individuals. I mean, the Celestial Restoration is tough to argue against, even without the command dice giving you the reroll.
Yeah.
But
Death.
I went so long without it. I actually have a higher winning percentage when I'm not concentrating on the heal outside of the Iron Resolve, and Heavy Hand.
Yeah.
The one thing I don't see people use that I was looking at this earlier, and Wither and Perish. I mean, we don't have access to weakness, but if you have a Defense 6 army and then you have a mage with Wither and Perish,
it's kind of good.
It's kind of really good. Yeah.
It is. The Alchemist Curse thing might be something. I hate saying this out loud, but Scorched Earth with one of these guys would actually be
Scorched Earth is the other one.
Yeah, I just like how they made him super versatile by no longer, assigning him automatically any spells at the start. And I run him with Surge 8, Bane Chant 2, and a Conjurer's Staff because I have the Horde of Earth Elementals. But now you have a reason to take him, even if you don't have the Shambling units.
Right.
And you can really tailor him to whatever you want to do. So I think it's a great piece.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of a great piece, one of my favorite things, and I'm not kidding, a Flame Priest. Flame Priests are freaking amazing. Like, I have the visions of running the 21 shot Afreet from the Abyssals.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Having this ninja Flame Priest in the back somewhere, where he's just an individual and he's a flame cannon, but he's better because he can face any which way that he wants, and you can't seem to get away from him. And he's just one bonkers son of a bitch that is just trying to light the world on fire. This is what I love this sort of thing. Increasing the fireball to 10 and adding the diadem of Dragonkind, just 16 shots. He'd be like, burn, you bastards, burn. I really like this thing. Like, I probably like it a little too much, but I really do like this.
So what else then, Ben, would you say you do the fireball and the Bane Chant?
I wouldn't even do the Bane Chant. This guy would be fireball all day, every day. That would be it.
So I run the Flame Priest. I freaking love it. I'm on board with you. When I was first taking him, it was just as you described, upgrade to Fireball 10 and then Diadem of Dragonkind for Fireball 16. And he is much easier to protect than the Flame Belchers. So his range is a little bit shorter, but you're probably going to get more turns of shooting off because it's harder to remove him and it's easier to get him into the place you want as an individual. But I don't know when, at some point I switched him over, and the way I kit him out now is still upgrade to Fireball 10, but then I actually take the periscope so I can look up as my artifact, and
nice.
I go knowledgeable to get the extra spellcast tier, and I take Mind Fog 3. And the thought process there is twofold. One, again, I love when my models represent what I'm doing. So I use Long Drong himself. If you could picture him, he's the Slayer Pirate, and he's got all the pistols, but he also has a parrot. And so in my mind, the parrot flies up above, and that's his periscope. And then you could dive bomb him at the enemy for the Mind Fog, which, doesn't do any damage, but it distracts them. So that's why they're shattered. And I do it that way because I want him to have something to do every turn of the game. Yes. And when I have the other long range shooting from the sharpshooters and then the organ guns at 24 inches, like sometimes just putting that shattering on the target you unloaded everything else on is exactly what you need. Sometimes your enemy has freaking war trombones, and you're like, well, I can see above your infantry and mind fog your war trombone, which is only an 8-10 nerve, and there's decent odds I'm just going to waver it, or I'm actually going to kill it. And so I find him to be super powerful, and I just love taking him.
This is Mind Fog's the other thing I would give this guy. It sucks that he doesn't inspire, but I think if he inspired, he would only ever be taken. Yeah. Because the Mind Fog is one of those spells where it's like, oh, you're 30 inches away. Cute. Like I'm still gonna get that one shot. Sometimes you just need to make that test. Sometimes it just needs to happen. I love this model. I really like the idea of this thing. I would do I would do the Mind Fog and the flame for this one. All right, we did the War Beast. Let's go on to the Steel Juggernaut, which I, for some reason, thought that it was the other thing. So do we even need to talk about the Steel Juggernaut, or should we just talk about the special character? Because, I mean, if you're taking one, you're taking Faber. Like, there's not even the points difference. Like, what the hell were they thinking?
Was it Tom Addis who played like 3 of them?
He did. Yeah.
Yeah, and he had pretty good results with that too, didn't he?
Yeah, I think if you take 3 of them, hell, if you take 3 of them and Faber, they're good. They're like an ogre character, right? This little large infantry base does a bunch of stuff. It has shooting. It's good in melee. It's defense 6 with fearless. But again, like I have the models to do it. I would love to take more than one, but it's hard to get the unlocks. It's hard to fit the points unless you're designing it specifically that way. And if you're taking one, Faber is so much better for 25 points. Oh, I'm, wild charge D3. Oh, I'm dash 15 instead of dash 13. Oh, I'm 7 attacks instead of 5 attacks. Like,
see what I mean about the 7 attacks?
And Faber is so freaking good. Like,
he is.
On top of that, Warsmith. So you can actually take and give out elite, and he's got his shots and all of it. Like,
you could.
It does make me sad. It does actually make me sad that I wish they had made this instead of 25 points. I wish he would have been closer to 190, 185.
Or even keep him at 175. Well, this is the dwarf player talking, right? And make the Steel Juggernauts a little bit cheaper.
No.
Just to me, the dash 13, even with the defense 6, it's
bloody
tough.
Good, mate. It is hard to crack. That is for damn sure. Faber, maybe he should have been like a dash 14 instead, maybe a little bit of a bump, that sort of thing. Do you take this guy, Joe, or is this
the Steel Juggernaut or Faber?
Faber.
I used to take him all the time. I actually stepped away from him for a little bit because I wanted to do 3 Dwarf Lords on large beasts.
Oh, okay. Was more for the speed thing, or was it?
It was more for the speed because I eliminated the Brox. So my
The height
entire
is
army,
nice on the Lord on Large Beast. They're height 4.
yes.
Well,
Yeah, and you get a couple of really good items on there, like the Trickster's Wand. I think Trickster's Wand, the Orb is another one that I like to run.
Yeah.
You get a unit strength 2. But the speed is a big issue. I took the Brox out a while ago just because when everything else is defense 6, that's what everyone's going to attack and get it off the board quick if they can see it. So I said, well, let's do an extra Dwarf Lord. And I had really good success with it. Faber, the amount of utility is great. He's dash 15, but a Dwarf Lord is 15, 17. We don't have Crush 2, we have Crush 1, but you got the Thunder 2 on the charge. So if you're coming in on the flank, you have a better chance of breaking. And just late game, you have a little bit better opportunity to get where you need to be.
Yeah, that speed is a big difference. And again, this is yet another unit with with defense 6. And like you said, all those things are great items to put on there. It's funny, we don't see the hex staff out this way. The hex is not really something that most of us use around here. It might be something that we would have.
I'm 0 for 6 against Twilightkin, so I got to figure out something to combat the weakness and all of those spells that cause damage now. But yeah, Trickster's Wand is a great combination because of the height.
Yeah.
It just allows you to neutralize maybe an Abyssal Dwarf Hexcaster.
Yeah.
With the weakness and so on and so forth. Yeah. But yeah, usually, those are the only magic items I would run, like the Orb or the Trickster's Wand on the Dwarf.
I like, I've never taken the Dwarf Lord on Large Beast only because I don't have a model to represent it. I love them. They're great. I've thought in just list theory, the Wingbane cloak would be kind of cool on them, or it's the -1 for enemies with flying to hit them.
You got to be individual to take it.
Oh, individual. Okay, so I've been thinking about that, I guess, on a king, not on the Lord and Large Beast. But that's Trickster's Wand is good. A basic reroll to hit or to damage.
What about the thing that people were taking, the what is that, the beast, the blade of
the Beast Slayer?
Yeah, because you've already got the 7 attacks, so it's not like you need the extra attacks. It's yet again 7 attacks is great on individuals. What the hell? But what about something like that? Is that something that the two of you might actually consider?
How many points is that?
20.
Is it 20? I thought it was 30. All right, yeah, 20.
Unless they changed it.
No, they haven't changed it. I know it's the same amount of points. But is that something that is this your beast killer? I still think that again, it's more your shooting and that sort of thing that you're going after.
Yeah, the way I look at Dwarfs is, it's death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
So I never thought of investing points in something to make it a little bit more killy. I figure by the time the Dwarf Lord gets in there, hopefully I've already weakened them a little bit with shooting. In a 2,300 point list, I'm usually only running about 15 points in magic items.
I think too, if you're taking Gallic or the other steel behemoths, you have your high crushing in those units. So you don't necessarily need it. It's not bad. Certainly not a bad choice. But
if you have Faber, you got Crush 2. These guys do give you Crush 1, but a lot of the shooting is Pierce 2.
Yeah. Reach out and touch somebody instead of worrying about them being able to punch back. Yeah. All right, well, let's get on to the last entry that we have not talked about yet, and it's Roden the Dwarf, or Roden the Untaken. I don't know anybody that's taken this guy.
That's why he has the "Now I'm Angry" special rule.
Exactly.
He's angry that he never gets taken. And when he does have a chance on the table, he's like, "Rah!"
So this this is just a reroll of all to hits and 2 wounds in a combat. If someone attacking him, right? So if you attack him and you do really well, now I'm angry. You can say, okay, you have to re-roll.
No, I think maybe they changed it.
No,
maybe it used to be that, but I'm looking at the Mantic Companion app right now, and it says once per game, After being given an order in the movement phase, Rorden can choose to gain Aura, Rampage, D3, Infantry
Oh,
only
they must have changed it.
Yeah, they
until the
must have
start of
changed
his
it. I think
following
you're right. I
turn,
think it was that before.
which is like great. Now my Iron Guard get 1 or 2 extra attacks with no crushing strength. Like,
Yeah, it's
that's not a great rule.
yeah, and for 125 points, like you guys were talking about before, like your points are already like
Yeah.
you're
He's
already
Pathfinder. That's kind of cute.
Yeah, he's
But
got
he's speed
Pathfinder.
4. You know, like,
So actually, in the book, in the Kings of War book, under Rorden the Dwarf, now I'm angry. It says once per game, after
Yep.
an enemy unit rolls to damage Rorden, whether in melee or with a ranged attack, the player can force the opponent to re-roll all successful rolls to damage.
See,
I like that rule
better.
so much better.
Yeah, what the hell?
Well, people were taking him so much, it was abused so widely. They had to address this and reduce its power.
Yeah.
Somebody went up to
That boggles the mind. Why did you change that? I don't know.
Somebody went up to the team and went, "We need to at least make it look like we made some changes that
Okay,
downgraded somebody." And they went,
Yeah.
"Who's never played?"
That guy.
The guy at the end of the bench.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the list. Hopefully, people have gotten some sort of insight on how this list is played. In which case, do you guys have any insight yourselves? Is there? I don't really mean like how do you play your list, but is there some sort of way that you look at dwarves that is the way that you sort of build it? Is there something that brought you to it, sort of thing? We'll end on that.
Yeah. Greg, you want to take it first?
Sure. I mean, for me, I love dwarfs. Like, that is like inextricably linked to my love of this hobby. When I started playing Warhammer Fantasy at the age of 12, Warhammer, like Dwarfs 6th edition Warhammer Dwarfs, like that was what I started with. And so several years ago now, I started this project where I took all these old models I had that I painted very poorly back in the day, and I scrounged eBay to like fill in the gaps with the things I didn't have. And my eyes were bugging out of my head when I saw how much these things cost now. Right. But like, for me, it was like a passion project from a hobbying standpoint. But it's also been the first time since, like, when did I start playing Kings of War? 2016, 2017, something like that. It's the first time I really took an army with like a legitimate ranged phase. And so I like that. And I think what I've found, the style I play, which is different from some, maybe from most, it's certainly not the way you have to play the army, but I try and strike the right balance where I have enough range in my army where if you don't engage me, you're going to lose units and you're going to feel pressure. But I don't have so much range that once our lines hit, I don't have enough units to withstand the charges, if that makes sense. And I do think it's a delicate balance where you can very easily invest too many points and your army just falls apart, or you don't invest enough and people can just dance around you for most of the game. So that's like, from a list designing standpoint, something I think you want to test out and think carefully about if you're going for a mixed arms approach.
Right.
What about you there, Joe?
I'll say, like Greg, I do like the mixed arm approach, but I didn't have that love for dwarfs that Greg did. I actually came into this game an elf player.
Wow. So
in Warhammer.
You really switched teams.
Oh, yeah. I sure did. I sure did. I never actually got to play elves too much. At the very beginning I did, but when I started tournament play, I was playing undead for a while. Did Varanger, did a lot of just pure melee armies.
Yeah.
And I liked the durability of undead, but I hated the fact that I didn't have a shooting phase. And the dwarfs just gave me the durability I was looking for, but allowed me to create a mixed arms type of an army and, force people to engage you. I like counterpunching more than attacking, because when I attack, I tend to make some incredible
Yeah,
miscalculations.
yeah.
Dwarves are very
Yep,
forgiving,
in there.
right? And I think it probably shows in my play style the fact that I have so many defense 6 units. I want to be able to sit there, pepper you, you come in, and then if I can engulf you at that point. So I like that play style. But this exercise of going through this entire list, I think the way we've always said that there's 90% of all dwarf lists are the same, right? It's that final 10% that's usually different with other people's armies.
Yeah.
There really are several ways to play this army.
Yeah.
If you go through all the units, some that will probably be really fun. I really want to figure out how to get those battle drillers and the flame belchers in. Now, you probably play an all infantry line, right, Greg?
Aside from the Horde of Earth Elementals. So, I mean, I can run through my list quickly. It's 3 regiments of Iron Guard. This is at 2,300.
Okay.
One of them with a Brew of Strength, all with Throwing Mastiffs. One with Liliana's Tear, which is like, what does that even do? It makes you immune to Brutal, Dread, and Shattering. And that's because the unit that represents them are Longbeards. And in Warhammer, they had a rule called Old Grumblers, where they're like, basically, they're not phased by anything because they've seen it all before. So, like, Liliana's Tear
How great is that?
It's great. And there have been games, I've taken a picture every damn time, but there have been games where I'm like, oh, you thought you routed me, you ogre horde, but you didn't because I took this 5-point item. Here's a picture to prove it. So I have those as like my mainstay, a horde of shield breakers, a troop of berserkers, a horde of earth elementals with sharpness, 2 sharpshooter troops, 2 organ guns, Faber, Gallic, and the stone priest. And the flame priest.
Okay,
that's it.
What's your unit strength in that about?
It's 20. It's kind of low for dwarves. It's 23.
Okay.
But I tend to kill a lot of stuff.
Right.
So unless I'm looking at somebody who's got like, a goblin or a ratkin or that kind of thing where it's like mid 30s, if they like go that route with an army, I can usually like make up for that deficit through removing units.
Yeah. My list tends to be more consolidated in the different types of units I use. So
and the battle driller, can't forget him.
Oh, the battle driller,
him too. Yeah.
When I went to Masters, I did 14 units, and I only had 14 total units, but I only ran 4 different units.
Unit types, yeah.
Unit types, yeah. I ran 3 Dwarf Lords.
Yep.
4 sharpshooters, 5 Iron Guard, and the 2 tanks. Right? So it's 5.
Yeah.
Did I get that right? 5. 2 is 7. 4 is 11. Yeah. And then that was the entire army.
Yeah.
So it was all defense 6 with the exception of the sharpshooters.
And that's a decent unit strength, right? Because that's
20. Well, I did the. Did I do the org in that one? So it's either 14 units, unit strength 24.
Yeah.
24.
Really, it doesn't matter with defense 6, mate. That's still,
you'll be surprised.
You could go in like 30 points under, and they'd still be like, "Damn it, why do we keep bouncing?" Like,
yeah, people get upset at the initial bounce, but you end up losing the battle of attrition if you don't sit back long enough and let the shooting do its work.
Damn you and getting games in and being good at it. Like, come on. Well, yeah, I mean, I think, Joe, you're more closer to the standard army nowadays, and Greg's is a little out there, but then again, I think
no, but I like his.
To begin with.
I feel jealous because he gets to play a bunch of units I have never had the joy of experiencing yet.
Well, maybe we can change that when you come up. Maybe we'll sit around, have a drink, and I think I owe you breakfast at the very least. You son of a bitch! I still haven't had a chance. The first time I met you, you were like, "Oh, we're gonna pay." I'm still getting you. Don't worry. Don't worry.
I'm looking forward to coming up.
It's a couple of weeks, and you're damn right. No, Fortunately, I've just finished playing in the same tournament as Greg Dennerwinter. That was fantastic, and I get to play you again. Hopefully, I actually get to play you, Mr. Bigazzi, coming up at March of Death.
Do I have you round one?
No, you do not.
Oh,
But until then, I would like to say thank you. Thank you very much for the two of you coming on. Honestly,
thanks
I
for
really do
inviting us.
appreciate it.
yeah.
Hopefully, our tens of listeners will have learned something at this point in time. And I've kept you both long enough. I really do appreciate it. But until next time, goodbye.
Take care, Ben.
Take
Greg,
care, y'all.
take care, pal.
See ya.